Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. My name is Caitlin Brower. I'm Sterling's Director of Social Media and PR and your host for Sterling Live. I'm so excited to have everyone here, our weekly live series across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We have, so many great guests come on, week after week, and this week is no exception. We've got a great crew here, 3 people. I love when we have panels. We have great discussions. So here are my guests. As you can see them, we have Ken Schnee, Head of Business Development, Sterling, Rich Lacey, Chief Product Officer, SambaSafety, and Quinci, Cubiburu, Head of Client Success for BeaconInsight. This great panel is going to be talking about what you see at the bottom of the screen here, fueling pre- and post-hire success with an end-to-end driver compliance solution. So we're going to be answering a lot of questions, around this topic today. We're also, going to provide some, exciting news into a solution from Sterling and everyone here. So I think to get us started, probably the best thing to do is the 3 of you introduce yourselves and then talk about your organizations and, how Sterling, Samba, and Beacon are coming together as true partners here. So Ken, I'm going to kick it off with you for introductions.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin, and great to be back on the show. Very excited to have this discussion with everybody today. For anybody online that I've not met, my name is Ken Schnee. I head up business development here at Sterling, and super excited about the discussion today, where we get to tell you a little bit about the ins and outs of how our 3 companies have come together to bring something to market that is truly unique. So I won't do the spoiler alert here, Caitlin, but I will pass on to one of my colleagues here to let them introduce themselves next.
Keep the people watching, Ken. All right. You got to wait for the good news that's coming. But Rich, I'll kick it over to you next for introductions. Oh, I think you're muted.
You would think after the last 4 years, I'd have a hang of that.
You know what? It happens all the time. So if it didn't happen, that would be weird.
Hi, everybody. Rich Lacey, Chief Product Officer at SambaSafety. At Samba, we help our customers, primarily employers, manage the risk associated with those who drive for work. And that's a really important thing because driving is actually the leading cause of fatalities in the workforce today. About 22% of all fatalities in the workplace are the result of driving. And in some of our industries, like transportation, it's even higher. It's north of 40%. Wow. So we do that with a comprehensive risk management platform that helps our customers and our partners identify qualified drivers, manage that risk as it evolves over time, and help prioritize intervention and coaching, both with analytics and with targeted driver training. So at the end of the day, we're looking to mitigate risk inside a corporation or inside of one of our customers, ensure our drivers get home, and we're even more successful and more effective when we partner with partners like Beacon and Sterling.
Awesome.
So, thanks for having me back.
Of course, I was going to say welcome back because you and Ken just did an episode with me a couple of weeks ago. So Ken's obviously been around here forever, on with me on Sterling Live. Always have him. But Rich, yes, thank you for coming back on short notice too. I mean, we just had you and now you're back. And I always tell my guests that I will be knocking on your door again. So Quinci, I will be knocking on your door again probably soon. But can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everyone. I'm Quinci Cubiburu. So I head up client solutions here at BeaconInsight. At BeaconInsight, we're a software as a service platform that allow organizations to automate the onboarding of their drivers, as well as the ongoing management of their DQF compliance, with a specific module that's going to allow you to organize the management of any of their training, qualification, certification that you need to for the employee positions that you manage.
Thank you. All right. Like I said, solid panel here. 3 great guests for us. We've got a lot to cover. I do want to take this moment, though, if you are watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube right now, if you have any questions for our panel throughout the episode, just go ahead and put those comments in the comment section across all 3 of these social media platforms, and I will get them over to the group as I see fit throughout the episode. So let's go ahead and get started. So it's really no kind of like surprise that there's a big competitive force. Little echo right there. With finding top talent, and then we're looking at the importance of positive, candidate experience pre and post hire. Ken, I'm going to come to you first on this one, and Rich, Quinci, please, chime in. But I think a lot of people probably just nodded when I said finding drivers, is a challenge. Can you talk about the competitiveness of finding top talent, and then really touching on that positive candidate experience when securing your best drivers?
Yeah, so as you said, it's no surprise that the candidate pool of drivers is small. They specifically are certified to, in this case, drive a commercial vehicle. And so as you continue to hone in on who your candidate pool is, the certifications, the location, everything really starts to shrink that pool down. As a matter of fact, 2023 saw the greatest turnover in the last 15 years of 19%, whereas over the last 15 years, we saw about an average turnover of 14%. So what does all this mean? A small pool, turnover is apparently appearing to be on the rise. And really, when you look at the candidate pool themselves, we're seeing 33% on average candidates dropping out of the hiring process. And I'll say they're not dropping out because they don't want a job. Let's put that on the table right now. They're dropping out for some reason, and it is most likely that they found another job that's easier to onboard to, that is more convenient. And when we actually went out and asked this group, we found out that 41% of that 33% actually were dropping out because of a complicated hiring process. Now, Caitlin, I promise not to spoil anything from here on out.
Not yet.
I won't tell you yet how we together plan to fix this, but I think just setting the stage on the competitive landscape that exists within driver populations and putting everybody's focus today on what can we do to make sure that we don't experience that 41% dropout? Because as we know, that's costly to our business. Time off the road is time off the shelves. And frankly, we're all in one goal, and that's to transport goods or services from one place to another. Curious what either Quinci or Rich feel on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Ken, to your point, it's not just even those kind of classic, transportation companies by SIC code who are in this market competing for the top drivers, right? You've also got kind of the gray fleet organizations, companies out there that are not transportation by SIC code, but are reliant on a suite of drivers to move their goods or services that are also out there vying for these candidates and trying to get them into position as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you can do to streamline that process and make that recruiting, onboarding process faster, more seamless, increases the likelihood that you're going to be able to land a driver. And by improving that experience up front, that really sets the stage for everything that happens throughout the course of that driver's employment with you. So it's critically important.
Yeah. So I think great way to kick off, this session here today. A lot of, really interesting stats. And then the insight around it, we gathered this data, like you said, Ken, but really what was the answer behind the data that we got? So I am happy that, we're sharing more insight, and now we're getting into, what can be the resolution here. So we didn't make you guys wait that long to really talk about this. So there is a clear need for an integrated driver solution. So let's talk about Sterling's integrated driver solution. So you guys are excited to talk about it. I'm excited to listen. Our audience is probably excited to hear about it as well. Ken, this one first is for you. And obviously, Rich and Quinci, feel free to chime in, but I actually have follow-up questions for the two of you. So from a high level overview, can you talk about our integrated driver solution and what this means for hiring managers?
Absolutely. So I think you heard both Rich and Quinci mention this in how they describe the candidate pool and the existing network of drivers that exists. And the truth is that it is a complex process the way that a driver is onboarded to an organization, and I'm going to speak holistically. Obviously, everyone out there probably has different solutions, and they're going about this in a multitude of ways. But you have a driver that's looking to become part of your fleet. And as part of that, the FMCSA says that there are a number of things that you have to do to remain compliant. One of those big pieces is driver qualification. And a big part of onboarding a driver in today's risk profile is also completing a background check. And another part of that, and part of the FMCSA compliance, is doing an annual check on their driver's license. And so you have all these components that you're trying to facilitate and onboard somebody in the shortest window possible. And so together, frankly, Quinci and Rich and the teams, we sat together working through a multitude of scenarios. But it turned out that most companies today have a process for background screening, a separate process for driver qualification, and then some sort of integration somewhere to ensure that they're getting that annual MBR and maybe a little bit of monitoring here and there on your drivers to really reduce risk. And Caitlin, I know that's what we talked about on our last Throwing Live, so happy to link that below in the follow-up here. But the truth is, and funny, the three of us really were working through a number of customers together and offering these solutions as I described in piecemeal, where we would have the background check and then potentially some integration of driver monitoring. And really, I think together we had an epiphany and we looked at each other and said, why is this not one single workflow? Why can the driver not come into the applicant tracking system, complete their background check, and then by way of them completing and being adjudicated by background, automatically be triggered into a driver qualification DOT application with all of that information pre-filled. And then as they go through that DQF application, seamlessly moving them into a DQ file where they can not only get annual MBRs updated, random drug testing, post-accident orders, but also integrating monitoring. Why can't this be one end-to-end solution? And the truth is, now I'm going to break the ice. We're here really to tell you that it is. And we've brought to market what we call the Sterling Integrated Driver Solution, which allows you to end-to-end applicant tracking all the way through driver monitoring, keep that one candidate on one track with the data flowing as we go, never repeating, never re-asking data, ensuring compliance of that data from step to step, and best of all, no longer managing a roster for random testing, a roster for MVR monitoring, a roster for DQO. It's one single solution, end to end, and frankly, brings our customers optimization that they frankly weren't even thinking about before we introduced the solution. So there you have it. I've broken the ice on this solution. And I think, as you can tell, I'm super excited to be talking to the market about this, because I really think it changes all of that pain we talked about at the beginning with the small market, the turnover. This has huge impacts on those markets and those numbers.
You should be excited. This is great news. So shout out to Sterling, Beacon, and Samba for coming together, identifying a problem and putting a resolution out in market for many organizations who are facing these complexities, and for something that really doesn't have to be that complex, Ken, like you had said. So shout out to all three organizations. One of my favorite things is coming on Sterling Live and sharing these stories of where something started and here it is now in current state. So congratulations to everyone involved. So for Quinci and Rich, I've got a couple follow-up questions for you. Quinci, I'll start with you. We're talking about the complexities here, not just with like a million different workflows, but even just how a candidate or someone else feels going through these processes. So obviously DQF is complex, but can you double down on how this solution will remove those complexities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you're thinking about DQF compliance, it's really two different prongs, right? There's the onboarding and creation of your DQF, as well as that ongoing management of your DQ compliance for the longevity of that driver being with you. And by automating the onboarding, as well as the ongoing DQF compliance processes, not only are you increasing efficiencies, but you're also closing the cracks that drivers have historically fallen through during those, manual managed processes, right? So now by leveraging technology and this integrated solution, you're removing the speed bumps, right, for the driver experience. They're not waiting for someone to send them an email with their DOT application or their paperwork. They're actually being ushered seamlessly between, right, our different respective platforms as they're being onboarded to receive the DOT application electronically. Any information they'd previously submitted, it's already auto-populated for them. So it just speeds up the process for them. The same thing goes for onboarding forms, right? So they've now got the opportunity to fill all of that out long before they're actually on site as a new employee, which it improves their experience significantly. The same thing goes for the stakeholders who have responsibility for onboarding new drivers, right? They're no longer trying to remember, oh, okay, we're bringing this individual on board. I've got to email them their onboarding paperwork, or I got to make sure that we hand them over that DOT application. I can sit back and rest assured, the technology has already automated all of that. I'm going to receive notifications when that's been completed, and I can focus on other tasks. This integrated solution doesn't just make it easier for the folks that are managing the onboarding experience, but it also for your existing drivers, right? I'm out in the field, I'm on break, and I receive a notification that my driver's license is up for renewal. All I have to do is take my driver's license out of my back pocket, snap a picture of the front and back of it on my smartphone, and hit submit. There's nothing left for me to do. That copy has been uploaded seamlessly into my DQ file, and the right stakeholders are able to view and verify that it was a clear picture. That's what management of my ongoing compliance now looks like. And what that ultimately means is it shifts the focus from folks who are chasing data, trying to get their arms around compiling data so that you've got summary of your current state compliance, to having all of that information immediately accessible. I'm no longer relying on requesting subsets of data. I'm not asking someone to pull that together for me. I'm able to review it and then leverage data to drive decisions that I'm making for the business.
So here's what I love about, your answer is that there's 3 different groups that this is helping. So it's the actual organization. You just mentioned chasing data. You don't need to do that anymore, and you get to focus on higher priority tasks. We're seeing that a lot in this space of just you're manually doing things. You don't have the time to do things, again, that are a business priority. So that's the first group. The second group is the candidates. We've been talking about the candidate experience this entire time. So it really drives that. And then that third group you mentioned is your current slate of drivers. So that's an important group too. You don't want who you have, that top talent that's hard to hire, we've already said that, to be frustrated with processes your organization has in place. So again, really thoughtful answer and description there, but the thing I took away was that 3 different groups are really being supported with this to get time back in the day, which I think we all would like an extra hour here and there. So Rich, my follow-up question for you, can you tell us about the driver lifecycle and how this integrated solution can support that?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically when you're looking for a professional driver, one of the first things you do as part of the background check is you look at their license history, determine do they have the right classification, do they have the right experience, is their driving record clean, all of those things. That's part of the background check, but that essentially is sourced from the motor vehicle record, which is also a critical component to the driver qualification file. So by integrating those 2 things and automatically inserting that pre-employment MVR into the driver qualification file, you're already starting from a really solid baseline, because that motor vehicle record drives a lot of the things that you need to ensure are in place for compliance. One of the other interesting things about our collaboration here is compliance and safety really go hand in hand. I mean, compliance exists to improve or ensure safety. And when you monitor your driver post onboarding, what monitoring does is it generates a motor vehicle record when and only when there's a change. And we then send that motor vehicle record back to the driver qualification file. So it's essentially like a live document then. You always have the most current up-to-date driver status, endorsements, medical certificate expirations, everything you need to be confident that that driver can get behind the wheel in the morning and operate that vehicle in a compliant way. And it's really important, just some of the basic administrative aspects of compliance. For example, if a driver doesn't get a physical in time and renew their medical certificate in a timely manner, or if they let the status of their license lapse and it's downgraded from a CDL or it's invalid because they didn't pay a parking ticket or other fines that are tied to their license. If they get stopped at a roadside inspection, that's an out of service order. That driver's probably not proceeding beyond that checkpoint or roadside inspection. And that has a very real cost to the carrier or the company. They have to figure out how to get a new driver there. They have to figure out how to get that truck back on the road. Chances are that delivery's late and there's fees and penalties and fines that are assessed. That in and of itself can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Avoid a few of those a year. You've probably gone a long way to paying for a solution like this already by avoiding those costs, which are easily preventable if you have a compliant driver qualification file. So really, again, the integration touches on all aspects of the driver lifecycle from the very beginning, recruiting and onboarding. And I think most importantly, maintaining a driver roster. That is a challenging task to be sure you have all your drivers up to date, who's current, who's not, their driver's license information. So by doing that in a single place and not having to maintain it in 3 or 4 different systems, again, has some pretty dramatic improvements in just streamlining process and freeing up your time to focus on other things.
That's great. And, we were just talking about saving time. You brought up the other important factor of saving money as well and providing, kind of that real-time look into what you can be saving or what could actually be a risky cost for an organization if something falls through the cracks. So I know our viewers are probably like, oh, yes. Time and money. So they're definitely loving hearing this. I want to take a quick second here to point out to our audience, again, if you are watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, I'm going to grab some final thoughts from the panel. But if you have any final questions, thoughts, please go ahead and put them in the comment section across these 3 platforms, and we can address those. But as we wait for any final questions to come in, final thoughts from the 3 of you from, today's episode. Really exciting announcement. A lot of really good data we walked through. A lot of just kind of workflows and processes we walked through as well. So Ken, I started with you today, so I'm going to end with you today on final thoughts here.
Yeah. So I by the way, everything that Rich and Quincy mentioned, just got the jitters going inside of me. With how exciting it is to be able to solve sort of this business problem. But the one thing that I'll point out is innovation. When we came up with this solution to really integrate this from end to end, it became clear through a lot of the conversations that the 3 of us had with customers or even prospects that this was an area in which, it was one of those, well, why didn't I think of that? But I didn't know this existed. And the truth is it didn't exist before the conversation we had with them. But we think it's critical. And this is, I'll call it the final frontier of innovation in driver onboarding. And really, the reaction that we're getting and just hearing people saying, well, I never thought that I could automate the flow of that candidate data into the DQF. I've been using this Excel for 10 years and it worked, but I didn't realize it could be that much better. You heard Rich talk about the single roster file. Just imagine not knowing that there's a solution to that and every month having to reconcile 4 rosters, 5 rosters across multiple vendors. And then even more so, not knowing if the same candidate applied for a background that ended up in your DQF that's now being monitored from a compliance standpoint. I think that's pretty important to make sure that we're tracking that candidate from an end to end. So my first point would be innovation is critical in this space, and we intend to really deliver this solution holistically. The next one is really synergy. Everywhere you can find synergy in your business today, obviously given the current macro, everybody's looking for synergies within their organization. And this is absolutely one where you can gain significant time and money. I'll go back to what Rich said, and Caitlin, you so graciously pointed out. But these synergies are now well known. We can help identify them with this workflow. And frankly, there's really no better way than to find inefficiencies in a process, implement them, and then get to feel the fruit of the labor after as this automation comes to fruition. And really, the last part is one of the biggest ones for me. And many of the clients that we've worked with this solution, they've never worked together before, or they have in some small capacity, like I mentioned, just to get data for the driver. But now more than ever, we're bringing parts of organizations together that have never talked to each other about a new hire coming on and what credentials they're coming with. So I can only imagine the future that this innovation and integration will bring to the transportation space, even beyond what we're talking about today. So as you can tell, continue going down this road. Super excited and appreciate the opportunity, Caitlin, to really bring this to market and let everybody learn about what we're doing in the space.
Really exciting for sure. I loved that last point, Ken, of, bringing people within an organization together that may have not worked, together in the past, but then it's kind of like light bulb, we should have been working together. So I love that the three of our organizations can come in and really help, other companies identify that. Quinci, I'll kick it over to you now for some final thoughts on today's episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say, some of the most fun conversations we get to have is when we're sitting down with organizations and they've got, folks that represent all different areas across the organization. And we are now talking about how they can collaborate, right? And there is the level of synergy or teamwork. It makes it so much more fun. And now that you can leverage technology to automate a lot of those processes around onboarding and the ongoing management of your DQ files, it not only becomes a competitive advantage, right? Kind of going back to what we talked about at the start of the conversation, because now you're getting those drivers engaged and into position as quickly as possible. But it also takes the guesswork out of managing your compliance, right? So now that you got access to a real state compliance, you understand exactly what action needs to be taken in order to close that gap, which ultimately just reduces your risk of exposure.
That's great. Rich, last but not least, some final thoughts from you.
Yeah, when I like Ken and Quinci, I talk to a lot of people and a lot of customers who spend a lot of time putting these processes together, and in manually updating DQ files and pulling MVRs and reviewing MVRs. And I acknowledge sometimes change can be hard, and sometimes I sense some apprehension in customers because I suspect they see automation potentially as a threat to all that work that they've put into automating these manual processes or implementing these manual processes. And I would challenge that by saying, this is the opportunity to shift from being tactical to being strategic. That if the blocking and tackling of chasing down documents is no longer on your plate and updating documents in a DQ file, it allows you to focus on those more strategic things like engaging with your drivers, coaching them, mentoring them, getting to know them, investing in them, because it's that type of relationship and that type of investment from an employer that creates loyalty. That's what gets drivers to stick with your organization and grow with your organization and become better. And everybody here, I think, would agree that you would much rather keep a driver and invest in them and coach them than to have to go recruit and hire a new one, because that's really expensive. And the longer a driver stays with your organization, the better they're going to be, the more effective they are at their job and the safer they are. So at the end of the day, this is really about enabling everybody listening to be less tactical and more strategic and drive your business forward. So I think it's one of the most exciting things about the collaboration here. Who doesn't want to be more strategic?
I was going to say that's a great thought to end on. I really loved today's conversation. Again, we hit on so many different things from, data and stats that we're seeing, a very exciting announcement for 3 of our organizations, things like collaboration for the 3 of us within other organizations. So just a lot of good things. Someone did just pop in on LinkedIn saying, well said, Rich. So good job. Like I said, really great thought to end on there. With that being said, again, a really awesome episode. If you would like to learn more about Sterling's integrated driver solution, you can, I'm going to throw the 3 of you out there, contact anyone to learn more. Don't contact me. I can't help you. But if you want to contact one of these 3, you can also go to sterlingcheck.com and learn a little bit more. Go on our social pages. We're going to have more information coming out over the coming weeks. It is also just on LinkedIn right now. If you are watching, it is in the chat of the episode we did with SambaSafety for Sterling Live a couple weeks back. So you get some more information there as well. So Quinci, Ken, Rich, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Sterling Live.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Of course. And thank you to our audience. And we have an episode next week. So I will catch you then. So thank you, everyone.